this is not just a sound that is good, this is therapy. This sound is what can just make all your senses go tingling if you are someone who loves driving. It is an absolutely insane machine to drive. The BMW M2 has always been a great example of how a proper sports car should be like. It has a long bonnet, it sits low, it is small in size, and still it packs in the right amount of punch to make things very, very interesting. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the all-new BMW M2. On paper and on first look, it seems to have all the ingredients that I just spoke about. But how good is it to drive, and does it still offer the proper thoroughbred sports car experience? Let's find out. Now, one of the first things to consider when judging a vehicle is the design. And when you look at the design of this all-new M2, things don't seem to start quite well. And I've got three reasons for that. Reason number one, the front. Now, when you look at the front of the new M2, well, it looks like a giant Lego. It looks as if it's been made purely out of plastics and blocks have been placed. So yes, it's a giant Lego. Reason number two, the side. All of these flared up bodywork, it is aggressive, but it still looks like a giant Lego. Reason number three, the rear, well, it doesn't look that much like a Lego with the exception of these two cubicle things in the bumper. It looks as if it belongs in a proper sports car with all these exhaust tips and the flared up bodywork. But because I know that this car looks like a Lego from the front and from the side, the car overall looks like a giant Lego. Now, the moment you step inside the cabin of the new M2, well, things do start improving. Unlike the exterior, the interior doesn't have any Lego or video game type of bits. It looks like a cabin that belongs to a proper BMW performance car. We have a familiar cabin, and that's perfectly fine. I like the way BMW cabins look. So this is another good looking cabin. You've got this carbon fiber finish here, gives it that racy feel. Also, you've got this new integrated curved display here, which we are now seeing in the new BMW cars, and it looks pretty fantastic. If I must say, it has this fully digital instrument cluster and the infotainment screen here. Both of them look great. The steering, again, it's nice and chunky to hold, has got all the controls, also has these two M buttons to change the performance settings. So yes, as far as the cabin is concerned, I think it is a nice place to be in. The seats, especially with this red and blue accents, they look phenomenally good. So the cabin, yes, looks great, but what about practicality? So this is how easy or hard it is to enter the rear seat of the new M2. And once you're there, this is the amount of space you get. So just about enough for a person of my height, and I'm 5'8" and barely enough headroom, and just about okay in terms of the under thigh support as well. The real reason why anyone would buy the M2 is its performance. And in terms of performance, well, let's talk about the hardware first. It comes with an inline 6-cylinder engine displacing 3 liters. It's got the BMW's twin turbocharged technology, and as a result of all this coming together, you get a brilliant 460 horsepower and 550 Newton meters of torque. The best is yet to come, because all of this power is sent to the rear axle, and that is exactly what you want from a proper sports car. All of the power going to the rear wheels, and this has it. But that's not the best bit yet, because all of the control for this power does not come from an automatic transmission only. Here you have the option of going in for a manual transmission, and this is that car, the one with the manual transmission, and that means you can have loads more fun with all of this power. So brilliant gearbox, it's got short throws, it's got a short lever, easy action, and it is being mated to the engine really well. So it's very tractable. It allows you to extract a lot of power. All of the power that the engine has got, you can deploy it using the gearbox and your right foot very easily. So it's not a car that is hard to drive. Unlike some other cars which have a lot of power and a manual gearbox and can be at times a bit tricky to drive, this one is fairly simple to drive but amazingly fun. Acceleration is rapid, and if you manage to get this car off the line, well, you will be rewarded to a very nice driving experience. It just shoots off the line. Even the in-gear acceleration is very impressive. So even when you're driving, say at 50 and you're in 4th gear, and if you are to press the throttle, well, it will not hesitate. It will take some time to build up momentum, but it doesn't just come around. It just doesn't feel as if it's a dud and you need to downshift. But yes, if you do downshift, the acceleration you'll get is pretty much rocket-like. And what makes all of this acceleration and the performance more fun is the sound. You also have the button here for making the sound louder from the exhaust. So it's got these electronically controlled flaps back there, and once you engage this, the exhaust gets louder, it gets more gurgly, you get more sound out of it, and it just feels so much better to drive. But the real fun of the sound is when you're driving the car. So all you need to do is put it into sport mode using these M buttons, engage the exhaust button, and then let your right foot go berserk. The brilliant gearbox, short throws like I said, and all that you need to do is stomp on the accelerator pedal, and the sound that you get is phenomenal. This is not just a sound that is good, this is therapy. This sound is what can just make all your senses go tingling if you are someone who loves driving. It is an absolutely insane machine to drive. Now, when you're going so fast, of course, you need brakes that can bring the car to a quick stop. And this has got some phenomenally good brakes. They do a really good job of bringing the car to a quick halt. But what I must mention is the sharp initial bite of the brakes. And well, on a standard car, this might be too much. But in an M2, this is exactly the kind of brakes you need. It doesn't mind dancing around corners at all. It's got great grip. The chassis balance is amazing. The car is rock solid at high speeds, and the best part about this car is that it's a point and shoot affair. It is that nimble. So where the steering points, this car goes. And when you're going into a corner, being rear wheel drive, it can also drift a bit if you want it to. Add to it the fact that the steering gives you a decent amount of feedback, so you will always have a fair idea of what's going around with the tires up front, what amount of grip you have. So yes, a good sports car experience, but I do wish that the steering was a little less lighter. It's a bit too light for my preference. On a sports car, I would want it to be a little bit more hardcore, but then again, considering the new age of buyers, I think probably the company has to design products for everyone. So at the end of the day, should you buy the BMW M2 if you're out in the market for a compact but powerful sports car? The answer is absolutely, because it is a brilliant machine to drive and a car that will just bring out the kid from you. If that kid has been sleeping for decades or years, this car has the ability to just wake up that kid and make that kid go crazy. And one of the best points about this car is the manual gearbox. This is something that gives this car a massive edge over any other car that your friends or your peers might have. When they bring their sports car, this is something that gives the M2 an absolute edge over anything else in the market. And if you look at this car from other aspects also, in terms of engine, in terms of the way it drives, the way it sounds, it is an absolutely amazing piece of machinery. But the chink in the armor, or the Achilles heel of this car, is its design. So the problem with the M2 is that this car just doesn't look like serious sports car stuff. It just doesn't give you that vibe when you look at it from the outside. Sure, when you drive it, you would know that this is an insanely fast sports car. It's a serious sports car. But when people on the outside see you driving this car, when people who don't know how well this car drives, when they judge you for driving this car, you're not going to be taken very seriously. That's the only problem I have with this car. So as long as you can live with that, I think the M2 is a car that has no parallel in the Indian market right now.